What do you mean by impact? I think this gets back to the vocation, right? There is sometimes a desire to too tightly control the results of our giving, or to measure impact in too narrow a way. So, what do I mean by that? You don't, Christian thinking is different than utilitarian thinking. These are not the same thing. And yet I see a lot of Christians basically thinking like utilitarians when they give. I want to produce the greatest good for the greatest number. Great. That's a perfectly wonderful utilitarian way of thinking. That is not a Christian way of thinking. It's not necessarily bad, but it's not distinctively Christian. That may not be, for instance, you can do the greatest good for the greatest numbers. The effective altruism argument might be through providing mosquito nets in a particular malarial area of Southeast Asia. But that may not be what you are called to do. The effective altruist would say, like, well, you're wrong. We're all obligated to give where we can do the greatest good for the greatest number. But that is not the Christian way of thinking. We are called to give in the way that God has called us to give, which we can only discern through prayer and through, I guess, becoming as virtuous as is necessary to be attuned to what God is calling us to do, right? So sometimes, a long way of saying, a rambling way of saying, sometimes we get like sucked into utilitarian practice. And then what's the last thing I would say? A mistake is not trusting in leaders as much as we should, and tying their hands maybe by restricting our gifts too narrowly. I want to give to you, but I want it to only be for this. I want to give to you, but I want it. It's got to be under these conditions and why. And sometimes that's fine, and sometimes that's maybe what we're asked to do. But I think the most givers are the most gratified and satisfied when they identify leaders and build relationships with those leaders that they believe in and trust, and then give to them with as few restrictions as possible, and see what happens as a result.
On that last point, would you say that you're kind of trying to frame it as you're giving to people rather than giving to a cause, or is that not the right way to say
No,
it?
that's not a bad way of putting it. Although you wouldn't be given to people regardless of the cause, right? I think I would say more. Actually, I probably would say more. I'm giving to a combination of people and mission on the one side, as against a program on the other, because programs come and go, and sometimes program in the nonprofit world, some specific project. I've got some idea for really combating homelessness in Phoenix. Here's my program. I come pitch it to Michael Frigon. They got a really good idea, but it may not work, right? And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but you're not going to be where you're going to get the most. If you really like the people and the mission behind that program, give them another chance. If you my point, keep investing in them. Not everything works, and sometimes givers give up a little too quickly on things. The worst part is that what a nonprofit business needs is more than anything is unrestricted funds. Sometimes donors think that somehow irresponsible of them to give unrestricted funds. And I don't think that's the case. I don't think in most situations, that's not typically how you should feel. If you believe in the mission, people together as a unit, giving them the most degrees of freedom possible to invest your gift wherever it's necessary is the best thing you can possibly do for them. Because oftentimes what gets squeezed out is like spending on infrastructure, the CRM, the fundraising, marketing, blacktopping the driveway. That's not a waste of money. Businesses need all of that. And it's as if an investor in a for-profit business said, like, I'm only going to give you money. I'm buying these shares, but I only want my money to be invested in, product development. It just doesn't make any sense. Businesses are a holistic unit. In the nonprofit world, sometimes, for some reason, we don't tend to think of it that way. Did I answer your question?